I was grilling steaks on our back patio when I noticed something glinting in the late afternoon sun near the fence line. At first, I thought it might be a reflection from one of the neighbors' windows, but when I walked closer with my tongs still in hand, I realized what I was looking at. A small black dome camera, mounted on a pole that definitely hadn't been there yesterday, was pointed directly at our pool area. My name is Kevin Morrison, and I had lived in the Meadowbrook Hills subdivision in Scottsdale, Arizona for 3 years. It was one of those planned communities where every house looked vaguely similar. The lawns were immaculately maintained, and the homeowners association had rules about everything from mailbox height to acceptable shades of beige for exterior paint. My husband Tyler and I had bought the place because the schools were good for when we eventually had kids, and the location was perfect for both our commutes. I set down the tongs and walked to the back corner of our yard, squinting up at the camera. It was professional grade, not some cheap security setup. The pole was planted firmly in the ground just on the other side of our fence, technically on HOA common property, but the lens was angled in such a way that it captured our entire pool area, the hot tub, and even part of our master bedroom window. "Tyler," I called toward the house. "You need to see this." My husband emerged from the sliding glass door, his reading glasses perched on his nose and a stack of documents in his hand. He worked from home most Thursdays, preparing for cases. Tyler was a federal privacy attorney specializing in surveillance law and data protection, and he took his work very seriously. "What's wrong?" he asked, walking across the patio. I pointed at the camera. "That wasn't there yesterday." Tyler followed my gesture, and I watched his expression change from mild curiosity to intense focus. He set his documents on the patio table and walked to where I was standing, studying the camera carefully. "That's a high-resolution PTZ camera," he said quietly. "Pan, tilt, zoom. Probably records in 4K, and it's absolutely pointed at our private property." "Can they do that?" I asked, though I already suspected I knew the answer. "No," Tyler said, his voice taking on that clipped professional tone he used when he was analyzing a legal situation. "They absolutely cannot do that. This is a clear violation of Arizona privacy statutes, not to mention federal wiretap laws if that camera has audio recording capabilities." I felt a mixture of anger and vindication. We had been having ongoing disputes with the HOA for months now. It had started small with a warning letter about our recycling bins being visible from the street on a non-collection day. Then, there was the complaint about Tyler's car being parked in our driveway overnight instead of in the garage. The most recent issue had been about our pool parties, which we held every other weekend during the summer months. The HOA president, a woman named Brenda Whitmore, had personally come to our door 5 weeks ago to complain about the noise. Never mind that our parties ended by 9 p.m., and Arizona didn't have noise ordinances that kicked in until 10. Never mind that we had invited all our immediate neighbors, and they had all attended and had a great time. Brenda had stood on our doorstep with her arms crossed and her lips pursed, informing us that multiple residents had complained about the excessive revelry and the inappropriate displays at our pool. When Tyler had politely asked what she meant by inappropriate displays, she had turned red and sputtered something about swimwear and community standards. I had been too stunned to respond, but Tyler had calmly informed her that what we wore in our own backyard was none of the HOA's business, and asked her to cite the specific covenant that addressed private swimwear choices. She had left in a huff, promising that the board would be monitoring the situation. I guess now I knew what that meant. "So what do we do?" I asked Tyler, He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the camera from multiple angles. First, we document everything. Then I'm going to send a formal cease and desist letter. And if they don't remove this camera within 24 hours, I'm filing a lawsuit and reporting them to the Arizona Attorney General's office. Isn't that a bit extreme? I asked, though part of me was pleased at the idea of fighting back. Tyler looked at me, and his eyes were hard. Kevin, this isn't about petty HOA drama anymore. This is surveillance of our private property without consent. If that camera has been recording, they've potentially captured footage of us in our swimwear, in states of undress, having private conversations. This is a serious violation of our constitutional rights, our state privacy rights, and potentially federal law. I don't take this lightly, and neither should they. We went back inside, and Tyler immediately went to his home office. I could hear him on the phone, his voice professional and controlled as he spoke to someone. I tried to focus on cooking dinner, but my mind kept drifting back to that camera. How long had it been recording? What had it captured? I thought about the times I had gone swimming alone, sometimes without a shirt, enjoying the privacy of our own yard. I thought about the conversations Tyler and I had shared on the patio, personal discussions about work stress, family issues, intimate moments. The violation of it made my skin crawl. Tyler emerged from his office an hour later with several printed documents. I've drafted a cease and desist letter citing specific Arizona revised statute sections on video voyeurism and privacy violations, as well as federal statutes under Title 18 regarding interception of private communications. I'm hand-delivering this to Brenda tonight. Do you want me to come with you? I asked. He shook his head. No, I need to keep this professional. The more formal this is, the better. I watched from our front window as Tyler walked across the street to Brenda's house, a pristine two-story with a perfectly manicured lawn and seasonal decorations that were always exactly within HOA guidelines. He rang the doorbell, and I saw Brenda answer. Even from this distance, I could see her defensive posture as Tyler handed her the documents. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes before Tyler turned and walked back home. Well, I asked as he came through the door. She denied any knowledge of the camera, Tyler said, his jaw tight. She claimed she would need to check with the board, and that if there was a camera, it was only for security purposes to monitor the common areas. Our pool isn't a common area, I know. I explained that in explicit detail. I also informed her that I have documentation showing that the camera is angled specifically at our private property, and that intent matters in privacy violation cases. She said she would bring it up at the next board meeting. When's that? Next Wednesday, 5 days from now. I felt my frustration rising. So, we're supposed to just let them record us for 5 more days. Tyler shook his head. I told her the camera needs to be removed or repositioned within 24 hours, or I would be taking legal action. I was very clear about that timeline. That night, I barely slept. Every time I looked out our bedroom window, I could see that camera in the distance, its dark lens watching. Tyler seemed unbothered, sleeping soundly beside me, but I knew him well enough to know that his calmness was deceptive. When Tyler was this quiet and controlled, it meant he was planning something. The next morning, the camera was still there. Tyler took more photos, this time with timestamp metadata enabled. He made phone calls to the Arizona Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division and filed a formal complaint. He also reached out to a private investigator he knew who specialized in surveillance equipment. I want to know exactly what that camera's capabilities are, he explained to me over lunch. If it has audio recording, This moves from a privacy violation into potential wiretapping territory, which is a federal felony. Can they really go to jail for this? I asked. If they knowingly recorded private conversations without consent? Yes, absolutely. Arizona is a one-party consent state for recordings where you're a participant, but this is third-party surveillance. That's completely different. The private investigator, a man named Rick Davidson, came by that afternoon. He was in his 50s with gray hair and a professional demeanor. He spent 20 minutes examining the camera from our yard with binoculars and some kind of scanning equipment. "That's a top-of-the-line camera," Rick said when he came back to our patio. "Axis Communications Q6215 La PTZ. Retails for about $3,000. It definitely has audio recording capabilities, night vision, and can be remotely controlled. Whoever installed this wasn't messing around." "Can you tell if it's actively recording?" Tyler asked. "The power indicator light suggests it's operational. Whether it's storing footage locally or streaming to a server, I can't tell without accessing the network. But based on the angle and setup, I'd say someone very deliberately positioned this to monitor your property." Tyler nodded slowly. "Thank you, Rick. Can you document all of this in a written report? I'll have it to you by tomorrow morning." After Rick left, I sat with Tyler on the patio, both of us staring at that camera. "What happens next?" I asked. "If they don't remove it by tonight, tomorrow morning I file a lawsuit in Maricopa County Superior Court for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of Arizona surveillance statutes. I'll also be seeking an emergency temporary restraining order to force immediate removal of the camera and preservation of any recorded footage as evidence." "This is really happening," I said softly. Tyler took my hand. "Kevin, I know this feels extreme, but this is exactly the kind of overreach that I fight against in my work. HOAs think they have unlimited power, and sometimes they need to be reminded that homeowner rights still exist. We have a reasonable expectation of privacy in our own backyard, and they've violated that in a significant way." That evening, Brenda appeared at our door again. This time, she had another woman with her, someone I recognized as Linda Summers, the HOA vice president. Both women looked stern and unyielding. "We've reviewed your letter," Brenda said without preamble when I opened the door. "The board has determined that the security camera is well within our rights to install. It's monitoring HOA common property." Tyler appeared behind me. "Mrs. Whitmore, the camera is angled directly at our private property. I have documentation from a licensed investigator confirming this." "The camera may incidentally capture some of your yard, but that's not our primary purpose," Linda said, her voice tight. "Incidentally." Tyler's voice was dangerously quiet. "It's a PTZ camera capable of zooming and focusing. There's nothing incidental about its positioning." "We're not removing it," Brenda said firmly. "If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the board at the next meeting." "I gave you 24 hours, Tyler said. "That deadline expires at 8 p.m. tonight. It's now 6:15. If that camera is still there at 8:01, I'll be filing a lawsuit first thing tomorrow morning." "You can't sue the HOA for enforcing security measures," Linda scoffed. "I can, and I will sue for violation of Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 13-3019, which specifically addresses unlawful surveillance. I'll also be filing complaints with the Arizona Attorney General and potentially the FBI if I determine that federal wiretapping laws have been violated." The color drained from Linda's face, but Brenda held firm. "Do what you need to do, Mr. Harris. We're acting within our authority." It's Harris Morrison, actually, Tyler corrected coolly. We both hyphenated, and you're not acting within your authority. You're committing a crime. After they left, I turned to Tyler. Do you really think they'll back down? No, he said simply. Brenda Whitmore is used to getting her way. She's been HOA president for 6 years, and I've done my research. She's been involved in dozens of disputes with homeowners. Most people can't afford to fight back, so they just comply. But we're not most people. At 8:05 that evening, Tyler took a final photo of the camera still in place. That's it, he said. Tomorrow we go to war. The next morning, I woke to find Tyler already dressed in a suit, something he rarely wore when working from home. I have a 9 a.m. court appearance to file the complaint and request the emergency TRO, he explained. I've also contacted a colleague who specializes in HOA law to serve as co-counsel. This is going to get messy, and I want to make sure we have all our bases covered. I'm coming with you, I said. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue, but then nodded. Okay, court attire, though. We need to look professional. We arrived at the Maricopa County Superior Court building in downtown Phoenix at 8:30. Tyler's colleague, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, met us in the lobby. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I've reviewed everything Tyler sent me, Jennifer said as we walked toward the elevators. This is one of the most blatant privacy violations I've seen from an HOA, and I've seen a lot. The fact that they installed a $3,000 camera specifically to monitor your property suggests malicious intent. Can we prove that? I asked. The positioning of the camera is pretty damning evidence, she replied. Plus, Tyler mentioned you've had ongoing disputes with the HOA. That establishes a pattern of harassment. The hearing before Judge Robert Chen was brief but intense. Tyler and Jennifer presented the evidence. Photos of the camera, Rick's investigative report, the cease and desist letter, and documentation of our previous disputes with the HOA. The judge listened carefully, occasionally asking questions. Has the HOA been served notice of this hearing? Judge Chen asked. Yes, Your Honor, Jennifer confirmed. We served them at 6 a.m. this morning per emergency TRO protocols. And they're not present. Apparently they didn't think it was worth attending, Tyler said dryly. Judge Chen frowned at that. He reviewed the documents for several long minutes, then looked up. I'm granting the temporary restraining order. The HOA has 48 hours to remove the camera and provide all recorded footage to the court for review. They're also prohibited from installing any surveillance equipment that monitors the plaintiff's private property. Violation of this order will result in contempt charges. I'm scheduling a preliminary hearing for next Friday at 10 a.m., at which time the HOA board will need to appear and explain their actions. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a surge of relief and satisfaction. We won, I said. We won this round, Tyler corrected. This is far from over. Now we need to serve them the court order and see how they respond. The process server delivered the TRO to Brenda's house that afternoon. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up with text messages from neighbors. Apparently, Brenda had sent out an email to the entire HOA membership, claiming that Tyler and I were suing the association over reasonable security measures, and that our lawsuit was going to cost every homeowner thousands of dollars in legal fees and special assessments. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against us, I said, showing Tyler the messages. He read through them, his expression darkening. That's defamation. She's misrepresenting the facts to damage our reputation. I'm adding that to the complaint. That evening, I noticed several neighbors giving our house strange looks as they walked their dogs. One couple who had been friendly before now crossed the street to avoid passing our house. Only our next-door neighbor, an elderly man named Frank Peterson, came over to talk. "I heard about the lawsuit," Frank said, standing at our door with his little terrier. "Brenda's been telling everyone you're costing them money." "That's not accurate," Tyler said calmly. "We're suing because the HOA installed a camera pointed at our private property. They're the ones who created this situation." Frank nodded slowly. "I believe you. Brenda's been getting more aggressive over the years. Last year she tried to fine me because my garage door was open for more than 4 hours on a Saturday while I was doing woodworking. Said it was an eyesore. I had to fight her on that too." "Did you know about the camera?" I asked. "No, but I'm not surprised. She's been talking about increasing security measures for months. I think she's paranoid." Frank hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Someone needs to stand up to her." After Frank left, Tyler spent the evening drafting an amendment to our lawsuit adding defamation claims. "The email she sent was to nearly 200 homeowners," he explained. "That's publication. And she made false statements of fact that have harmed our reputation. Textbook defamation." The next morning, the camera was gone. In its place was a note, printed on official HOA letterhead and placed in our mailbox. It read, "The surveillance camera has been removed per court order. The HOA board maintains that our actions were lawful and appropriate. We look forward to defending our position in court." "At least they complied with the TRO," I said, reading the note. "They had no choice," Tyler replied. Violating a court order would have meant contempt charges and possible jail time. But notice how they're still claiming their actions were lawful. They're going to fight this. The preliminary hearing the following Friday was packed. Brenda showed up with 3 other board members and a lawyer. A man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Gerald Patterson from a firm that specialized in representing HOAs. The courtroom was small, and I noticed several of our neighbors in the gallery, apparently curious about the proceedings. Judge Chen called the hearing to order and got straight to business. "Mr. Patterson, your clients installed a surveillance camera pointed at the plaintiff's private property. The evidence seems quite clear on this point. What's your defense?" Patterson stood, his demeanor confident. "Your Honor, the camera was installed on HOA common property to monitor that common area for security purposes. Any incidental capture of the plaintiff's property was not intentional." "Your Honor," Tyler interjected, standing. "May I present additional evidence?" Judge Chen nodded. Tyler approached with a laptop and a series of blown-up photographs. "These images show the camera's field of view compared to the actual common area. The common area in question is approximately 15 feet wide. The camera's field of view, based on its angle and zoom capabilities, covered approximately 60 feet, with our pool area directly in the center of the frame. Additionally, we have evidence from the camera's metadata that it was remotely adjusted multiple times, suggesting active monitoring rather than passive recording." "How did you obtain the camera's metadata?" Patterson demanded. "The HOA was ordered to provide all footage and data to the court," Jennifer Walsh said, standing. "We received access to that footage yesterday. The metadata is embedded in the recordings." Patterson looked surprised, and I saw him lean over to whisper urgently to Brenda. She shook her head, looking confused. Judge Chen's expression was stern. "Mr. Patterson, did your clients provide the footage as ordered?" "Your Honor, I'll need to consult with my clients," Patterson said. "That's a yes or no question, Counselor." Patterson conferred with the board members, and I could see the panic in their faces. "Your Honor, there seems to have been a miscommunication. The footage may not have been preserved." The courtroom went very quiet. Tyler and Jennifer exchanged glances. "Are you telling me," Judge Chen said slowly, "that your clients destroyed evidence after being served with a court order to preserve it." "Not destroyed," Patterson said quickly. "The system may have automatically overwritten the footage. It's on a 7-day loop." "The court order was issued 9 days ago," Tyler said, "which means the footage existed when the order was served and has since been deleted. That's destruction of evidence, Your Honor, spoliation." Judge Chen's face was hard. "Mr. Patterson, I'm going to ask you directly. Did your clients delete the footage after receiving the court order?" Patterson conferred again with the board members. When he turned back, he looked defeated. "Your Honor, I need to request a continuance to fully investigate this matter with my clients." "Denied," Judge Chen said sharply. "Mrs. Whitmore, please stand." Brenda stood, her face pale. "Did you delete the footage from the surveillance camera?" the judge asked. The system automatically deletes." Brenda stammered. "That's not what I asked." "Did you or anyone acting on your behalf manually delete footage after receiving the court order?" There was a long pause. Linda Summers, sitting next to Brenda, suddenly spoke up. "I did. I deleted it." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Chen banged his gavel. "Order, Miss Summers. You understand that you just admitted to destroying evidence in violation of a court order." Linda looked like she might cry. "I didn't think it was important. Brenda said the camera didn't record anything inappropriate." "Whether it recorded anything inappropriate is not for you to determine," Judge Chen said coldly. "The court ordered that evidence preserved, and you destroyed it. That's contempt of court, and it's also potentially obstruction of justice." Patterson was frantically whispering to his clients, but the damage was done. Judge Chen continued, "I'm finding the HOA board, specifically Mrs. Whitmore and Miss Summers, in contempt of court. I'm imposing a fine of $5,000 each, payable immediately. I'm also granting summary judgment to the plaintiffs on the invasion of privacy claim. The fact that you destroyed the evidence creates an adverse inference that the footage would have shown exactly what the plaintiffs allege: intentional surveillance of their private property." "Your Honor, that's—" Patterson started. "I'm not finished." Judge Chen cut him off. "The case will proceed to trial on damages, including punitive damages given the egregious nature of the privacy violation and the subsequent destruction of evidence. I'm also referring this matter to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to the surveillance and evidence destruction. We're adjourned." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt stunned. Tyler and Jennifer were discussing next steps, but I was still processing what had just happened. "Did that judge just refer them for criminal charges?" I asked. "Yes," Tyler said. "Depending on what the county attorney finds, Brenda and Linda could be facing criminal charges for unlawful surveillance and obstruction of justice." "I almost feel bad for them," I said, though I didn't really. "Don't," Jennifer said firmly. "They made a choice to violate your privacy. Then they made another choice to destroy evidence. They need to face the consequences." Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated in ways I never anticipated. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office opened an investigation, and detectives actually came to interview Tyler and me. They asked detailed questions about our interactions with the HOA, the camera installation, and everything that had happened. Meanwhile, word had spread throughout the neighborhood about the court hearing. Brenda's email blast had backfired spectacularly once people learned the actual facts. Several homeowners reached out to apologize for initially believing Brenda's version of events. Frank Peterson told us that there was talk of calling a special election to remove Brenda from the board. "She's lost all credibility," Frank explained one evening over our back fence. "People are looking into other decisions she's made, and it turns out she's been playing fast and loose with HOA rules for years. There are questions about the budget, contracts awarded to her friends, all sorts of things. A month after the preliminary hearing, the county attorney's office filed criminal charges. Brenda Whitmore was charged with 1 count of video voyeurism and 1 count of destroying evidence. Linda Summers was charged with destroying evidence. The news made the local papers, and suddenly our quiet HOA dispute was a public scandal. I came home from work one day to find Tyler on the phone, pacing in his office. When he hung up, he looked troubled. "That was Gerald Patterson," Tyler said. "The HOA's lawyer. He wants to settle." "What kind of settlement?" I asked. "Full dismissal of all HOA claims against us, a formal apology, payment of our legal fees, and $250,000 in damages." I sat down heavily. "That's a lot of money. It's a starting point." "Jennifer thinks we can get more, especially with the criminal charges pending. The HOA is panicking because their insurance company is threatening to drop coverage if this goes to trial. Plus, if Brenda gets convicted, it opens them up to even more liability." "What do you want to do?" I asked. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Part of me wants to take it to trial, make an example of them, but the practical part of me knows that settlements are certain and trials are not. Plus, I don't really want to spend the next year of our lives consumed by this." We talked about it for hours. Finally, we decided to counteroffer. $350,000, full legal fees, a formal public apology, and immediate resignation of Brenda Whitmore and Linda Summers from the board. Additionally, the HOA would have to amend its governing documents to include explicit privacy protections for homeowners. The negotiations took 2 weeks, but eventually the HOA agreed to our terms. The settlement agreement was signed on a Tuesday afternoon in Jennifer Walsh's office. Gerald Patterson looked exhausted, and the 2 board members who came to sign, neither of whom were Brenda or Linda, seemed shell-shocked. "I want you to know," one of them said to us, a man named Robert Chen, no relation to the judge, "that most of us had no idea what Brenda was doing. When we found out about the camera, we were horrified." "Then why didn't you stop it?" I asked. "We didn't know until after you filed the lawsuit," Robert said. "Brenda made a lot of decisions without board approval. We're working on reforming how the HOA operates." The formal apology was published in the HOA newsletter the next month, along with an announcement of Brenda's resignation. It didn't mention the settlement amount, but it acknowledged that the HOA had violated our privacy rights and expressed regret for the situation. The criminal case took longer to resolve. Linda Summers pleaded guilty to misdemeanor destruction of evidence and received probation and community service. Brenda, however, decided to fight the charges. Her trial was scheduled for 6 months after the settlement. Tyler and I were both called as witnesses. The trial lasted 3 days, and it was surreal sitting in a courtroom describing our backyard pool and the invasion we'd felt. The prosecutor was thorough, presenting evidence of the camera's capabilities, its positioning, and expert testimony about reasonable expectations of privacy. Brenda's defense attorney tried to argue that she had acted in good faith to protect the community, but it fell flat. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on the video voyeurism charge. She was acquitted on the evidence destruction charge, apparently because the jury believed Linda had acted alone on that, but the voyeurism conviction was enough. The judge sentenced Brenda to 90 days in jail, suspended pending successful completion of 2 years probation, a $5,000 fine, and 200 hours of community service. She was also permanently banned from serving on any HOA board. Life slowly returned to normal after that. We kept the settlement money in investments, deciding to use it eventually for a larger house when we were ready to start a family. The new HOA board was much more reasonable, and they actually sought input from homeowners before making major decisions. Our pool parties resumed, bigger and better than before. Frank Peterson came to everyone, bringing homemade potato salad. Other neighbors who had initially been wary now went out of their way to be friendly. The couple across the street, Maria and John Chen, still no relation to the judge, apologized profusely for believing Brenda's lies and became good friends. One Saturday afternoon, about a year after everything had settled, Tyler and I were floating in the pool on inflatable loungers, cold drinks in hand, enjoying the Arizona sun. "You ever think about what would have happened if you weren't a privacy attorney?" I asked. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I think about it sometimes. Most people wouldn't have known their rights or had the resources to fight back. Brenda probably would have gotten away with it like she apparently got away with other things for years." "It's kind of scary," I said. "It is," Tyler agreed. HOAs have a lot of power, and most homeowners don't realize they can push back against overreach. That's why I'm thinking about writing an article about this case for a legal journal, maybe doing some presentations. People need to know they have rights. "You're going to become the anti-HOA crusader," I teased. He laughed. "Maybe someone has to do it." Frank appeared at our back fence, waving. "Pool party next weekend," he called. "Absolutely," I called back. "Bring that potato salad." As Frank walked away chuckling, I looked around our backyard. Our private backyard where we could relax without being watched, without being judged, without someone thinking they had the right to monitor our every move. "You know what?" I said to Tyler. "I'm glad it happened." He looked at me in surprise. "Really?" "Yeah, I hated going through it, but we stood up for ourselves. We didn't let them bully us. And now other people in the neighborhood know they don't have to put up with that kind of treatment either. That's worth something." Tyler smiled, reaching over to clink his glass against mine. "To privacy, property rights, and overreaching HOA boards getting exactly what they deserve." "I'll drink to that," I said. The sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, I could hear kids playing in someone's yard, the sound of laughter and normal suburban life. No cameras watching, no board president lurking with a clipboard full of violations, just people living their lives in peace. The aftermath of the trial brought some unexpected developments. About 2 months after Brenda's conviction, I got a call from a reporter at the Arizona Republic, the state's largest newspaper. She had been following the case and wanted to do a feature article about HOA overreach and homeowner rights. "I've been investigating HOA abuse stories for a while," the reporter, whose name was Samantha Torres, explained over the phone. "Your case is particularly egregious, but it's not unique. Would you and your husband be willing to go on record?" I told her I'd talk to Tyler about it. That evening we discussed it over dinner. On one hand, I don't love the idea of our story being splashed across the newspaper, I said. On the other hand, if it helps other people. "I think we should do it," Tyler said decisively. "This is bigger than just us." HOAs across the country are increasingly overstepping their authority, and there's very little accountability. If our story can shine a light on that, we have an obligation to speak up. We met with Samantha the following week at a coffee shop in downtown Scottsdale. She was in her 30s, sharp and professional, with a recorder and a notebook full of questions. We spent 2 hours going through everything: the initial camera discovery, the legal battle, the settlement, and the criminal trial. "What bothers me most," Tyler told her, "is that this kind of thing happens all the time, but most people can't fight back. They don't have the legal knowledge or the financial resources to take on their HOA. These organizations are supposed to maintain property values and handle common areas, not surveil residents and micromanage their private lives. Have you heard from other homeowners since your case became public? Samantha asked. Dozens, I said. People from all over Arizona, some from other states. Stories about HOAs fining them for ridiculous things, restricting their use of their own property, harassment campaigns. It's eye-opening and depressing. The article came out 3 weeks later, front page of the local section with the headline, "When HOAs Go Too Far." Scottsdale couples fight against surveillance sparks larger conversation about homeowner rights. It was thorough and well-researched, including interviews with us, statements from Jennifer Walsh about HOA law, and comments from several other homeowners who had faced similar issues. The response was overwhelming. The newspaper received hundreds of letters to the editor, most supporting us but some defending HOAs as necessary for maintaining community standards. Tyler's office was contacted by at least a dozen people asking for legal representation against their own HOAs. He couldn't take them all as clients, but he referred them to Jennifer and other attorneys who specialized in HOA law. "I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit," Tyler mentioned one evening about a month after the article ran. "Something that provides legal resources and information to homeowners dealing with HOA issues, maybe offer free consultations, help people understand their rights." "That sounds like a lot of work," I said carefully. "You already work crazy hours." "I know. But this has shown me there's a real need, and I have the expertise to help." He paused. "What do you think?" I thought about all the messages we'd received, the stories of people feeling powerless against their HOAs, the sense of violation we'd felt when we discovered that camera. "I think it's a great idea," I said, "and I'll help however I can." Tyler smiled and pulled me into a hug. "This is why I love you." Over the next several months, Tyler worked with Jennifer and several other attorneys to establish the Arizona Homeowners Rights Project, a nonprofit dedicated to educating homeowners about their rights and providing legal assistance to those facing HOA overreach. They set up a website with resources, sample letters, and information about state laws. They even secured a small grant to offer free legal clinics once a month. I got involved too, helping with the administrative side and volunteering at the clinics. It was fascinating and sometimes heartbreaking to hear people's stories. There was the elderly woman whose HOA tried to force her to remove her rose garden because it violated landscaping standards. Never mind that she'd been tending those roses for 20 years. There was the young couple who were fined $500 because their mailbox was the wrong shade of black. There was the disabled veteran who was cited for parking his specially modified van in his driveway because it was too large, even though it was the only vehicle he could drive. Each story reinforced why our fight had been important. Brenda Whitmore hadn't been a unique tyrant. She was part of a systemic problem where HOAs wielded power without adequate oversight or accountability. Meanwhile, back in our own neighborhood, the new HOA board was proving to be genuinely better. They held open forums where homeowners could voice concerns. They published detailed financial reports showing exactly how dues were being spent. They revised the governing documents to be less restrictive and more focused on genuine community needs rather than arbitrary standards. Robert Chen, the new president, even came to apologize to us personally about 6 months after the settlement. "I've been on this board for 3 years," he told us, sitting in our living room with coffee. "I should have paid more attention to what Brenda was doing. I trusted her, and that was a mistake." You weren't the only one, Tyler said. She had a lot of people fooled. Still, I'm sorry you had to go through that. And I want you to know that we're implementing new oversight procedures. No board member can authorize expenditures over $500 without majority approval. All meeting minutes will be published online. And we're establishing a homeowner grievance committee so that if someone has an issue with a board decision, there's an appeals process. That all sounds really positive, I said. It should have been this way all along, Robert said. We're supposed to be serving the community, not controlling it. After he left, Tyler turned to me. You know, a year ago I was ready to move out of this neighborhood. Now I actually think we can stay. Me too, I agreed. It's funny how things work out. Our lives continue to improve. The stress of the legal battle had taken a toll we didn't fully recognize until it was over. With the settlement money invested and the nonprofit getting off the ground, we finally felt like we could breathe again. We started talking seriously about starting a family, something we had put on hold during all the chaos. Then, about 18 months after the initial camera incident, something unexpected happened. I was at work, managing the IT department for a mid-sized tech company in Temp when I got a call from Tyler. You're not going to believe this, he said, his voice tight. What happened? Brenda violated her probation. She was caught trying to access the HOA's surveillance system, trying to get footage of another homeowner. You're kidding. I wish I was. Apparently she was still bitter about losing her position, and she wanted to dig up dirt on Robert and the new board. She convinced the security company to give her access by claiming she was still authorized. The company didn't verify with the current board, and she downloaded footage from several cameras around the neighborhood. That's insane. What cameras? I thought they got rid of all the surveillance after what happened to us. They kept cameras at the entrance gates and the community center, which is reasonable for security. But Brenda accessed footage of Robert's house and a couple other board members' houses. When the security company sent the routine access logs to the HOA, Robert noticed her name and figured out what happened. So, what happens now? She's being arrested for violating probation and potentially new charges related to unauthorized access to computer systems. The prosecutor I talked to said she's looking at actual jail time now. I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. She really can't help herself, can she? Some people never learn, Tyler said quietly. Brenda's second legal saga played out quickly. Because she had violated her probation so blatantly, the judge revoked her probation and imposed the original 90-day jail sentence. She was also charged with felony unauthorized computer access, which carried much stiffer penalties than her original misdemeanor conviction. This time, there was no trial. Her public defender advised her to plead guilty in exchange for the felony charge being reduced to a misdemeanor and concurrent sentencing with her probation violation. She agreed and ultimately spent 4 months in the Maricopa County Jail before being released. I almost feel sorry for her, I told Tyler after we read about her sentencing in the local news. She lost everything over this: her reputation, her position, her freedom. She made her choices, Tyler said, but his tone was softer than it had been before. I'm not happy about any of this, Kevin. I never wanted to send someone to jail. I just wanted her to leave us alone. I know. We were quiet for a moment, both of us processing the weight of everything that had happened. Then Tyler said, "You know what? Let's plan a vacation. Somewhere far away from HOAs and legal battles and all of this. Just us." That sounds perfect, I said. We ended up spending 2 weeks in Hawaii that summer, staying at a beachfront rental in Maui. No HOA regulations, no neighborhood drama, just sun and sand and relaxation. It was exactly what we needed. When we got back, tanned and refreshed, we found that the neighborhood had continued to thrive in our absence. The summer block party had been a huge success, according to Frank. Several new families had moved in, attracted by the new, more reasonable HOA management. Our house value had actually increased, ironically enough, despite Brenda's warnings that our lawsuit would hurt property values. One evening in late August, almost exactly 2 years after the camera incident, Tyler and I hosted what we called our anniversary pool party to celebrate not just the legal victory, but everything we'd built in its aftermath. The backyard was packed with neighbors, friends, colleagues from the nonprofit, even Jennifer Walsh and her family. Frank Peterson raised his glass to make a toast. To Kevin and Tyler, who taught all of us that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's hard. And to second chances for all of us who didn't speak up when we should have. There was a chorus of "here, here," and the sound of glasses clinking. I looked around at all these people, this community that had been broken and rebuilt, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Later, after most of the guests had left and we were cleaning up, Maria Chen from across the street came over to help with the dishes. "I never properly thanked you both," she said quietly, "for what you did. My husband John and I, we were so scared of the HOA before. We paid fines we couldn't afford for stupid things, and we were afraid to push back. Watching you fight, seeing you win, it changed how we thought about our rights. We're not afraid anymore." "That means a lot," Tyler said sincerely. After Maria left, Tyler and I sat by the pool, our feet dangling in the water, watching the stars come out. "You regret any of it?" I asked. Tyler considered the question carefully. "The stress and the conflict and the time it took. Yeah, sometimes I wish we could have resolved it differently. But the outcome? No, we made a difference not just for us but for other people. That's not something to regret." "What about the nonprofit? Are you glad you started it?" "Absolutely. We've helped over 100 families in the past year, people who would have just suffered in silence otherwise." "That's meaningful work, Kevin. You sound like you're thinking about doing it full time," I observed. He was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking about it. My federal privacy work is important, but the nonprofit feels more directly impactful. I don't know, still figuring it out." "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," I said, squeezing his hand. The years that followed brought more changes, all positive. Tyler did eventually transition to working on the nonprofit full-time, and it grew into a statewide organization with chapters in Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff. They helped pass legislation that increased transparency requirements for HOAs and created clearer legal remedies for homeowners facing overreach. I got promoted to director of IT at my company, which came with a significant raise and more flexibility. We started the family we'd been planning, adopting a baby girl we named Emma. Watching her take her first steps in our backyard, the same backyard that had been the center of so much conflict, felt like a kind of redemption. Our neighborhood continued to be a good place to live. The HOA maintained its reformed approach, focusing on genuine community building rather than arbitrary enforcement. They organized regular events, maintained the common areas well, and stayed out of homeowners' private business. It was what an HOA should be. Frank Peterson became Emma's honorary grandfather, always there with a smile and a bad joke when we needed it. Robert Chen proved to be an excellent HOA president, serving 2 terms before stepping down to spend more time with his own grandchildren. The new leadership continued the policies he'd established. We never heard from Brenda Whitmore again after she got out of jail. According to neighborhood gossip, she moved to a house in Surprise, a different Phoenix suburb, somewhere without an HOA. I hope she found peace there, though I never forgot what she'd put us through. 5 years after the camera incident, the Arizona Homeowners' Rights Project held its annual fundraiser gala. Tyler gave a speech about the organization's accomplishments. Thousands of families helped, millions of dollars in unjust fines overturned, dozens of HOAs reformed or dissolved entirely, and new state laws protecting homeowner rights. "None of this would have happened," Tyler said to the crowd, "if my husband and I hadn't noticed that camera in our backyard 5 years ago. But more importantly, none of this would have happened if we hadn't decided to fight back." Every person in this room has contributed to changing how HOAs operate in Arizona. Every donation, every volunteer hour, every person who shared their story has made a difference. This work is far from over, but together we're creating real change. The applause was thunderous. I stood in the back of the room, holding 3-year-old Emma, feeling proud beyond words. After the gala, driving home through the Phoenix night with Emma asleep in her car seat, Tyler reached over and took my hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For supporting all of this. The lawsuit, the nonprofit, everything. I know it wasn't easy. You stood up for our rights, for our privacy, for our home," I said. "Of course I supported it. Plus, look what came out of it. All those families we've helped. The laws that changed. It mattered, Tyler." "It did," he agreed. "It really did." We pulled into our driveway, that familiar driveway in our familiar neighborhood. The house was dark and welcoming, our sanctuary. I looked toward the back fence line where that camera had once been, but now there was nothing but darkness and privacy and peace. Carrying Emma inside, tucking her into her crib, kissing Tyler goodnight, all of it felt precious in a way it might not have if we hadn't fought for it. Our home wasn't just a house in a planned community. It was ours, truly ours, protected by law and by the courage it had taken to stand up when it mattered. Sometimes I thought about all the people out there still living under oppressive HOAs, still being harassed and surveilled and controlled. I hoped they heard our story. I hoped they knew they had rights. I hoped they found the courage to fight back. Because in the end, that's what it came down to. Courage and knowledge, and refusing to accept that someone else had the right to violate your privacy and control your life. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always fun, but it was worth it. Every single day in our peaceful backyard by our private pool, it was worth it.